Hello, welcome to another episode of Dynasty Top Sells presented by Zilla Fantasy Elite. I'm your host, Todd Hoffman. You can find me over on Twitter at ToddZilla1337. Please hit the like button and smash the subscribe button for the YouTube channel. Thanks, guys. Today we're going to be talking about Mr. J.K. Dobbins and why we have him as a top Dynasty sell heading into the 2021 season. Don't hate me, folks. I know this one's going to be an unpopular opinion. It is going to sting to hear some of this information, but please hear me out on this one. If you stick with it, you'll see we're not saying Dobbins himself is bad. It's simply the situation he's in, which limits his upside, and his price right now is out of control given this information, which is why this episode is being recorded right now for your benefit. With that being said, as always, let's first look at the measurables over on playerprofiler.com. On here, we don't see a whole lot from Dobbins in the athletic profile, as he didn't do anything at the combine besides the bench, which he tested well at 23 reps, good for 74th percentile among running backs. So he's a strong dude. The only other physical tools we see here are his height and weight at 5'10" and 209 pounds. Now, this isn't necessarily considered bell cow size for an NFL running back, but that 210-pound cutoff is right where you consider someone sturdy enough to take a pounding at the NFL level. So Dobbins is at that cusp. He's big enough, but not safely inside the bell cow mold that we would like to see ideally for running backs. Now, for his college production, we see that the college target share is at the 56th percentile, just making it over that 50th percentile threshold we'd want to see. That would tell us Dobbins is a solid pass catcher. So we know he is at least capable in this department. Number 2, we see his college dominator rating in the 63rd percentile, which is a nice score there. Number 3 and number 4 are the speed score and the 40 time, which we don't have. And number 5, we have the college yard per carry. He's hitting a massive 6.7 yards per carry in college, good for 87th percentile. Based on his athletic and production profile here, you might be asking, well, why is Dobbins a top sell candidate? Well, as I said before, it's because of his situation. Plainly put, it's because of Lamar Jackson and the combo of Greg Roman and John Harbaugh at offensive coordinator and head coach. It's also about how high Dobbins' value is right now compared to what is likely to happen to him while he's in Baltimore. And sorry about this episode, guys. No film on J.K. Dobbins for this one. This is simply going to be some numbers and non-Game Pass film visuals, I guess. Just know that he truly does look good. Dobbins is actually pretty good on film. I'd actually put him third personally on my chart behind DeAndre Swift and Antonio Gibson from this 2020 rookie class as far as how impressive they are in film and passing the eye test. Again, this top sell episode is because of Dobbins' situation, not his talent. With that being said, let's look at Dobbins' 2020 season. We see him coming in with 134 carries and a whopping 805 yards on those 134 carries. That's good for 6.0 yards per carry. That is massive. He also scored 9 rushing touchdowns on those 134 carries. He also saw just 24 targets and caught 18 of them for another 120 receiving yards, good for 6.7 yards per reception, and he didn't score on any of his receptions there. Overall, this might seem like a great year for a rookie that was splitting carries between himself, Gus Edwards, who actually led the team in running back rush attempts, Mark Ingram, and also 2019 rookie speedster Justice Hill. Remember, he ran a 4.40 at the combine, so he's pretty quick. Also remember, Lamar Jackson was taking a bunch of rush attempts and actually led the entire team in rush attempts for the 2020 season. However, if we look into historical numbers of this team and its coaches, it might give us some cause for concern, and that's the reason for this episode. I want to give out 4 main issues that I have, and we'll touch on each one here. The first issue I want to start with is probably the least concerning of all the issues, which is Dobbins splitting the running back carries with other backfield mates. As I said, in 2020, it was actually Gus Edwards who led the team in total running back rushing attempts, as he had 144 carries to Dobbins' 134. Now, Dobbins played one less game than Edwards, as Edwards suited up for all 16 games in 2020. However, Edwards still outpaced him on a per-game basis 9.0 to 8.9. It is a bit concerning that Dobbins couldn't beat out Edwards in carries per game, despite both being healthy for most of the season. And while this is a concern, as I said earlier, it's the least concerning issue I have. I fully expect Dobbins to garner more opportunity than his backfield mates in 2021. And we'll swing back to the splitting carries aspect as we talk about some of the next issues in this episode. Now, there is a chance that Gus Edwards doesn't re-sign with Baltimore, but I think that's actually pretty slim. He's been there the past 3 seasons and has averaged 12.5, 8.3, and 9.0 rush attempts per game over the past 3 seasons respectively, while also averaging 5.2, 5.3, and 5.0 yards per carry in those 3 seasons. He also comes in listed at 6'1" and 238 pounds as of 2020 on the Ravens official webpage, which is really, really big. He also ran a 4.57 in the 40-yard dash at the Combine in 2018. So he's got a side speed combo there that's fairly decent. He's the big banger that Baltimore wants. He has some juice for a guy his size and is still just 25 years old as of March 2021. I think Baltimore tries to keep him on for another few years. He was an undrafted free agent coming out of college, so he'll be cheap. He's always been super productive and still has yet to miss a game in 3 seasons as a big bruising back, so that's impressive. With that being said, my second issue is the total number of running back carries that Baltimore has with Lamar Jackson at the helm. When I started researching Dobbins, this was one of the big surprising aspects which made me dig deeper into his situation and come away with the fact that he should be a Dynasty sell currently. So with that in mind, in 2020, Baltimore only had 363 total running back rush attempts, which is 22.7 per game. For reference, this is about the same amount of carries per game as Dalvin Cook himself had in 2020. However, Dobbins is going to likely be sharing that backfield with Gus Edwards and Justice Hill at the very least, if not another old busted vet or a UDFA or late round running back that they're going to bring in the offseason. Now, that 2020 team was not quite as nice of an offensive team as the 2019 Ravens were when Lamar won his MVP award. The Ravens were up huge and up quick in a lot of those games and were simply running out the clock after the first quarter or two in a lot of those games in 2019. So how many running back rush attempts did they have in 2019? 393. That's good for 24.5 running back attempts per game, which is nearly 2 more per game than they had in 2020. However, 24.5 still isn't that many to be splitting up amongst all of the running backs there, especially if someone like Gus Edwards is eating up around 9 of those per game. This leaves 15.5 total per game for the rest of the running back room. I'm starting to not like the sounds of that rushing volume for the running backs there in Baltimore. That brings me to my third issue, the coaching staff and Lamar Jackson himself. We have John Harbaugh as the head coach, Greg Roman as the OC, and Lamar Jackson obviously as the quarterback there. These things are not changing in 2021. They will all be back and likely doing the exact same thing that has been working for them to win games and make the playoffs over the last 2 years. None of these things bodes well for J.K. Dobbins seeing any sort of huge jump in overall opportunities for the 2021 season. First, Greg Roman has been an offensive coordinator for 8 different seasons in the NFL. First with Alex Smith, a mobile quarterback in 2011 for the San Francisco 49ers. He was OC there from 2011 through 2014, which we'll get into in a little bit. In 2015 and 2016, he headed over to Buffalo to become their OC for Tyrod Taylor's couple of seasons there. After that, he went to Baltimore as an assistant head coach, senior offensive assistant, and tight end coach until that 2019 season. That's when Roman was promoted to the offensive coordinator in Baltimore, and Lamar Jackson would become the starter full-time for the first time in his career going into his second season. Now, take a listen to Greg Roman's offensive running back rush attempts per game while being an offensive coordinator. This is where things start getting very interesting. 2011, San Francisco, 26.4 running back rush attempts. Again, that's Alex Smith at the helm there. The next season, 2012, that's their Super Bowl season where Smith and Kaepernick kind of split. Smith played the first half of the season. Kaepernick finished it. They went to the Super Bowl with Kaepernick. 24.25 rushing attempts from the running backs for that season per game. The next year, 2013, all Kaepernick, 25 rushing attempts per game from the running backs. In 2014, they had 22.3 rushing attempts from the running backs. Then he goes in 2015 over to Buffalo and Tyrod Taylor. 23.43 rushing attempts from the running backs per game. 2016, that following season, still in Buffalo, 23.8 rush attempts per game from the running backs. Then he missed those couple of seasons while he was an assistant there at Baltimore, gets promoted to OC in 2019. So 2019, Baltimore up quick, up a bunch, 24.5 rushing attempts from the running backs per game. 2020, 22.7 rushing attempts per game from the running backs. So in his 8 seasons as an NFL offensive coordinator and largely having the most mobile quarterbacks in the league, he has only had one season where his running backs averaged more than 25.0 rush attempts per game. That was his first season in 2011 with Alex Smith at quarterback. Again, I'm starting to get nervous about that rushing volume in Baltimore. Now let's look at John Harbaugh and his overall team philosophy. He seems to enjoy a great defense, and he employs field-stretching wide receivers. Think of Hollywood Brown, Torrey Smith, Mike Wallace, Jacoby Jones, those guys. He also likes to have some dynamic playmaker wide receivers. Think Devin Duvernay, Steve Smith, Jeremy Maclin, and even, to an extent, if you want to say, Anquan Bolden. And he also likes his athletic tight ends. Think Dennis Pitta, Hayden Hurst, Mark Andrews. He's got a general philosophy that he's liked ever since he's came there into Baltimore. He also seems to enjoy having rotational backfields for running backs where one guy rarely gets 60% or more of the carries on the team. As a matter of fact, you have to go back 9 seasons, all the way back to 2012 to get the last time a Baltimore running back had more than 60% of the running back carries for one of his offenses. This was actually Ray Rice's second to the last year in Baltimore before being canceled for knocking out his wife. Rice's last full season in Baltimore, 2013, he only had 55.5% of the running back carries that year. So there's not a very good track record as of late for John Harbaugh teams deploying one main running back that carry the load. This also makes me nervous. The last and likely my biggest concern, though, is the running back target volume in Baltimore with Lamar Jackson at the helm of a Greg Roman-led offense. And I hope you're sitting because these numbers may cause some shock. Prepare yourselves. In 2011, with Alex check down Smith at quarterback, Greg Roman's San Francisco offense had 58 total running back targets. Gore had the most of the lot with 31. Again, that's targets, not receptions. In 2012, 53 total running back targets. Gore had the most with 36. Remember, this was the Super Bowl season split in half with Smith and Kaepernick at quarterback. In 2013, all Kaepernick now, 37 total running back targets in 2013. 27 the most by any running back, again, Frank Gore. In 2014, 39 total running back targets, 19 the most for any one running back. That was Gore yet again. Now 2015, he's in Buffalo now. 79 total targets to running backs, 50 the most by any one running back, which is LaShawn McCoy. In 2016, 80 targets to the running back position, 57 is the most to any one running back, again, by LaShawn McCoy. We get those few years where he's an assistant. 2019 now with Baltimore and Lamar as his MVP season, 61 total running back targets. Mark Ingram had the most targets with 29 of those 61. And finally, last year in 2020, 59 total running back targets. 24 was the most by any one running back, and that was actually J.K. Dobbins. The most running back targets we have ever seen out of a Greg Roman-led offense is 80 for an entire season. That was back in 2016 with Buffalo. He has 59 and 61 the past 2 seasons with Baltimore. For context, the league median in 2020 was 100 running back targets, meaning half the teams were above that. In 2019, the median was actually 103 running back targets. Greg Roman was second to the last in the league last year, only 3 ahead of the Tennessee Titans offense. In 2019, they were also second to last, only 1 running back target ahead of the Rams, and they were actually 3 behind the Titans in 2019. This is my biggest concern for Dobbins' prospects moving forward, since the vast majority of leagues these days have some form of PPR to them. To give you an idea of just how much of an edge pass catching gives in a full PPR league, last year we saw Derrick Henry rush for over 2,000 rushing yards in 16 games. Alvin Kamara, however, only played in 15 games and had just 932 rushing yards. Derrick Henry even had 1 more rushing touchdown than did Alvin Kamara in 2020. Yet, in full PPR leagues, Alvin Kamara still had 44.7 more fantasy points than Derrick Henry because Kamara gets that PPR bump along with all of the extra receiving yards. Even Dalvin Cook, who had 1 less rushing touchdown than Henry and played in 2 less games, had 4.7 more PPR points than Derrick Henry last season. How can this be? Because Cook had 44 receptions and Kamara had 83, while Derrick Henry only had 19. So here comes the heavy-hitting stuff on why we're doing an episode for Dobbins being a top dynasty sell. If Dobbins is on a team that doles out just 60 running back targets per year and has around 23 running back rush attempts per game, how is he ever going to get enough volume to compete with the top running backs in fantasy football? The answer is that he won't. So let's run the math for Dobbins based on historical evidence and some projections. I think Dobbins will share a backfield with Gus Edwards. Edwards will eat up at minimum 8.5 carries per game, and he has yet to miss a game due to injury in his career. He will get this many because he has always produced, and it will also help keep Dobbins fresh and less likely to become injured. I think Baltimore will not change a thing on offense and will be around 23.4 carries per game in 2021. This leaves us with a total of 14.9 carries per game for the rest of the running backs in Baltimore, not named Gus Edwards. I think we can safely pencil in Dobbins for 12.9 carries per game of those final 14.9. The remaining 2 per game will be split between Justice Hill and company, whoever else is there. Best case scenario is that Dobbins plays a full 16 games. If he does this, he's looking at 206 total carries, 4 more than 2019 Mark Ingram, and good for a 55.5% share of the running back carries. That's the high end of what we're seeing from John Harbaugh's teams over the past 9 seasons. Dobbins and company have been very efficient over the past 2 seasons with Lamar Jackson at quarterback, though. I think 5.3 yards per carry is not out of the question for Dobbins. This would put him at 1,091 total rushing yards. Again, this is assuming best case scenario of 16 games played and a very healthy 5.3 yards per carry. Now let's get to the abysmal passing game numbers. 2 seasons of data, 59 and 61 running back targets. Let's give a best case scenario and say that jumps up to 68 running back targets. Let's also assume that Dobbins is head and shoulders above and better than the rest of the running backs, and he has a historical Greg Roman percentage of the running back target share at 70% of the running back targets. This puts us at 47 targets, already doubling what he received last season though. Assume he catches 75% of his targets like he did last season, and we're looking at 35 total receptions for 2021. Again, this is assuming best case scenario of 16 games played, a nearly 15% increase in running back target volume over the past 2 seasons for their team, and Dobbins receiving a historic amount of the running back target share in a Greg Roman offense at 70%. This gets us all the way to just 35 receptions. Give Dobbins 8 yards per reception, and we're looking at an additional 280 yards through the air. Unfortunately for Dobbins, Gus Edwards had triple or more the amount of rush attempts from both inside the 10 and inside the 5-yard line. Dobbins only had 3 rushing attempts inside the 10. Neither of them even had a target inside the 20-yard line. Lamar Jackson also had 10 rushing attempts inside the 10-yard line last year and only scored 1 rushing touchdown on those 10 attempts. I think that will improve for Jackson next season as well. What this all means is that if Dobbins is going to score, it's likely going to be from a minimum of 15 to 20 yards out. So his touchdown upside, I think, is also capped. Let's give him 8 rushing touchdowns in 2021 and say he sneaks 1 in through the air. These are darn near exaggerated best case scenario numbers for Dobbins, and we're getting a season total in half-point PPR leagues of 196.6 fantasy points. For reference, in 2020, this would put us at RB number 12 overall and RB 23 to 25 range in points per game. That's Kenyon Drake and Melvin Gordon territory from last year on a per-game basis. Not exactly great, and this is kind of darn near exaggerated best-case scenario numbers for Dobbins. Dobbins will never have a top 3 running back season on the year in his range of outcomes. Not while he's in Baltimore with Lamar Jackson and Greg Roman and John Harbaugh. It's going to be tough for him to ever crack the top 10 running backs in a season unless there's a shift in offensive philosophy or multiple injuries to the running backs behind him and he sees a high touchdown variance season. He's got 3 more seasons in Baltimore before his rookie contract is up. Unfortunately for Dobbins, I don't see a whole lot changing there in Baltimore between now and then. At that point, Dobbins will already be 25 that offseason and looking for a second contract. A contract in which he will turn 26 before the first year of it is even expired. Running backs' best years are their first 3 or 4 years in the league. This is when they're the most productive, and then at about age 25, they hit their age apex, and then they're on the decline from there on out. What the heck are we doing holding on to Dobbins for all his years in Baltimore, where his realistic ceiling seems to be RB 20 to 24 in fantasy points per game, and his name value is putting him at 108 in some industry Dynasty startup drafts. And according to a tweet by the Sleeper app, Dobbins is averaging the 13th pick overall in Dynasty startups right now. Absolutely absurd given what we know about his situation now. The overall combination of Dobbins' situation and his massive price valuation in the Dynasty community as of early March 2021 are the reasons why I have Dobbins as a top Dynasty sell. Again, this is not a knock on Dobbins' talent. I believe he is talented, truly talented. His situation is just never going to tap into his true potential, and that's unfortunate, but that happens. By the time he gets out of that situation, he'll be on the decline in his career, and his best Dynasty years will have been wasted. If what I'm predicting here bears out in the 2021 season, I think Dobbins will actually be one of the biggest Dynasty value drops between the beginning and the end of the year. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Dynasty Top Sells presented by Zilla Fantasy Elite. I'm your host, Todd Hoffman. You can find me over on Twitter at Todzilla1337. If you want more off-season Dynasty content like this, or you enjoy seeing the all-important rookie, second, and third-year breakouts with your own eyes during the NFL season, or you're just looking for free help in building your DFS lineups during the season using my proprietary adjusted line play report, which, by the way, has proven to be one of the most successful DFS tools in the industry, give the Zilla Fantasy Elite YouTube channel a subscribe today. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye.